Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are in the world. It is my great honor and privilege to welcome you to the SJSU School of Information's 2025 Pride Month celebration themed Queer Archives, Exhibitions, and Community. My name is Dr. Anthony Chow. I'm the director of the School of Information and honored to be with you here today. We gathered today to recognize and uplift the voices, stories, and legacies of the LGBTQIA plus community and individuals, and the communities and institutions that work tirelessly to preserve them. Pride Month is not just a celebration, it is an act of remembrance, of visibility, and of ongoing resistance against marginalization. As a person of color who grew up in the Deep South, I know firsthand what it feels like to be explicitly and unapologetically not accepted for who I am or for how I look. It took me many years to understand that the power to define and embrace who I am on my own terms resides within me. That realization was profoundly empowering. But no one walks this journey alone. It's through community, through support, and through spaces like this one that reaffirm one another's right to exist fully and proudly. We must continue to support those who are still navigating that journey, who may not yet feel seen, safe, or celebrated. Today's event highlights the powerful work of archivists, curators, and scholars who ensure that LGBTQI plus histories are not erased but honored. I thank our keynote speaker, Alexis Bard Johnson, and our esteemed panelists, Gabrielle, Garcia, and crew Maekdo, for being with us today and for the transformative work they do. With that being said, I'd like to introduce you to our keynote speaker. So Alexis Bard Johnson is the curator at the One Archives at the USC Libraries. She oversees the exhibitions, programs, and art collection at one of the largest repositories of lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer materials in the world. She was most recently curated The Space We Take, Portraits from the Archive and Fairy Prints. Previously, she curated Sci-Fi, Magic, Queer LA, Sexual Science, and the Imagination as part of the Getty's PST Art Initiative, looking for lesbians and archival intimacies, queer Southeast Asian diasporas. Johnson earned her PhD in art history with a minor in feminist, gender, and sexuality studies from Stanford University in 2019. Her essay, The Work of Being Sex, Andy Warhol on Drag, appeared in Contact Warhol, Photography Without End. She also contributed to the revised edition of Art and Queer Culture. Before joining the One Archives, Johnson worked at the Princeton Art Museum, the Whitney Museum, and the Terra Foundation for American Art. When she's not researching and writing about queer visual culture, she loves to spend time baking and gardening. Originally from Chicago, she now lives in Los Angeles with her wife, toddler, and their two tuxedo cats. Please join me in welcoming our keynote speaker, Alexis Bard Johnson. Alexis?
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to be here and share some of the work of the archive and be in conversation afterwards with both Crew and Gabrielle. I hope we're able to have a kind of spirited and rich discussion about the work that all of us are doing at Queer Archives and for queer communities. So I thought I'd take time today just to share a bit about One Archives for those who might not know, and then also share some of the exhibitions and programs that I've been working on since I arrived here, thinking about how they build community and how we work with community and how we keep bringing more and more folks into the archive. As one of our people who work here says, the archive is really only as good as it's used, and we want the archive to be able to be used as much as possible. So let me share my screen quickly here. Play this slideshow. All right, that's about me a little bit, and I mean, always follow. I should put our One Archives USC Instagram as well, which is our archive account. But I'll take a moment first just to talk a little bit about the archive itself. For those who haven't visited in person, this will be your virtual introduction. Hopefully, some of you who are listening have come to visit. We are part of University of Southern California, technically part of the libraries. We became part of the library in 2010, but our archive started in the early 1950s. It's our mission to collect, preserve, and make accessible LGBTQ plus materials while promoting new scholarship on and public awareness of queer histories. So we started in the 1950s. I'll talk a little bit about that history in a moment. Our current building is a former fraternity building, which is kind of amazing irony. And you can see it on the left. We have a reading room in our downstairs space. So anyone is able to come, make an appointment, request materials to research. I'll get into what kind of materials we have in a moment. But we welcome everyone. You don't have to be a university student. You don't have to be a University of Southern California student. We welcome community members, scholars, artists, creators, community members, anyone who wants to come look at materials can come and access our collection. You're getting two tiny views of our collection on the right, just to give you a tiny sample of what it looks like. Most of our rooms, of course, are boxes of archival materials. And I'll go to the next slide, which talks a little bit about our history. I'll give you a very tiny condensed history, and if you want to know more, there's some great resources I can point you towards. But as I said, we started in the early 1950s. One Incorporated is one of the oldest, we would now say queer, but kind of gay or homophile organizations, formed in 1952. One of its main purposes, as stated, was to publish a magazine, which they started in January of 1953, basically the oldest nationally circulating gay magazine. It was called One Magazine. You see a sample of covers here. If you come to our archive in person, we have all the magazine covers on view. And in addition to kind of some amazing cutting edge designed by folks including Eve Ellery, who's an amazing female artist who did a lot of really interesting geometric abstract covers. We also have topics that people are always surprised that we have, like homosexual marriage, and other things. So it started publishing in 1953. It went on for several decades. One issue is actually flagged by the Supreme Court. Here, I'll just throw a couple close-ups. I love the 1958 cover that says, "I'm glad I am a homosexual." Obviously, at this time, we're in the Lavender Scare. You could be fired if you're found out to be gay and working for the civil service. So these messages that might strike us today as kind of almost commonplace, although in our current environment, maybe not as much anymore. But I think the fact that they're being published in the 1950s and 60s is something really remarkable. But as I was saying, one of the issues was flagged by the Postmaster General of LA as being obscene. It goes, to make a long story short, all the way to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court overturns it and says, actually, you can publish, and that's a kind of watershed moment for not only One Magazine, but queer publishing in terms of what you can publish and send through the mail. I'll go back for 1 second and just say, this guy who you're seeing here on the left, his name is Jim Kepner. He joins One not at its initial founding, but soon thereafter, and we kind of think of him as the father of the archive in a lot of ways. He started collecting materials very early on, and again, to kind of consolidate a story, a long kind of history, his collection merges with another collection, and kind of we have him to thank as starting the archive today. So a little bit about the archive, just as a means of getting us kind of situated. We have over 1,000 distinct archival collections. That ranges from individuals' collections, organizations, all kinds. 31,000 plus books, 2,500 plus videos and films, over 1,900 periodicals, over 8,000 works of art, 6,900 audio recordings, and 5,000 plus posters and ephemera. We try to collect as much variety of medium as possible, especially recognizing that queer history, it's not just in archival collections, it's not just in books. Sometimes it's in costumes, or sometimes it's in someone's button collection or someone's vest. And so as much as we can, we try to collect that range of material. And I think that's reflected in our holdings and hopefully for anyone who comes. either see exhibitions or programs or look at our collection, you get to see that kind of range. So I'm just showing a very tiny microcosm of that on this slide, but we try to bring out a variety of materials when people come for class visits or programs. Um, our collection is more national in scope than international and more LA focused than not, but it's pretty national and it's very international, especially in the periodicals. The bottom left is a guy who came to visit from the Netherlands and he was translating some material for me. So that's one of the most fun parts. If we have someone come in and speaks a different language, we always look at our periodical collection and what's not in the English language and we try to collect as widely as possible. So maybe I'll back up for a moment and say that this talk really, I'm going to talk about the different kind of programs and exhibitions that I've undertaken since arriving, in part in the hope to kind of think about the different ways that I've been trying to engage community, and the archive has been trying to engage community in different queer communities within Los Angeles and beyond. And then I hope that in the discussion we can talk about some of these strategies, what's been most effective, what I'd still like to do, what other people are hoping archives like ours or others, especially the speakers who are going to be speaking with me later, are undertaking, and maybe some of the challenges at this current moment that we're in. So, in order to do that, I thought maybe I'd just kind of share some of what we've been up to in that process. So, I arrived here in fall of 2019 and was just starting to work on a whole exhibition schedule. We have kind of two small exhibition spaces at the archive, kind of downstairs space, which you'll see in subsequent slides, and an upstairs mezzanine space. And really the goal of our exhibition program is really to showcase our collection, to work with kind of contemporary artists and community makers, community members. And then that process really also, at least since I've arrived, really dispel like what an archive is, dispel myths about the archive being a closed space, or really kind of examine what an archive is, what kind of holdings we collect, that we might be interested in the stuff that's in your basement, and through exhibitions and bringing people into the space to kind of do that work. Of course, 2020 posed a slight challenge in that regard with COVID. We, like many other institutions, were closed for a bit, and I found myself thinking about what I could do as a curator or a culture worker or a trained art historian in this moment of early COVID. And so what you're seeing on the slide is one of my first projects at the archive called Safer at Home, which took the place of basically an online exhibition where I looked at our own archive and thought about objects that were relevant to that moment. So thinking about early COVID and the lack of hospital beds, and how in some ways very related to the AIDS epidemic and was in other ways how it kind of was not the same, and those parallels were helpful and not helpful. Thinking about moments of solidarity. And so I ended up writing basically an entry a week about a different object in our collection, really as a way for me to process what was happening, but also to share that experience with others. And hopefully others found kind of solace and resonance in materials in the archive. And it was my first kind of offering as a new-ish curator here to think about how our archive and collection of materials, Ron Grayson and Troy Perry on the left, Button, Glendale, Lisa Ben, some unknown artists, all could kind of help us think through this early COVID moment. I also invited four artists who you see on the screen to share their practice and what they were doing while they were stuck kind of in the studio in COVID, and shared that in an online format. At the same time, we partnered with Leslie Lohman Museum in New York and offered a series of performances brought to your living room via mostly Zoom or other kind of online platforms called Remote Intimacies. This is curated with Jean Vaccaro, who was a postdoc fellow here at the time, and we engaged artists from all over the world to bring performances to everyone's home environment. Again, with this thinking of what were we most missing during this COVID time when everyone was stuck at home, and what could we do as an archive, or what would we normally do, which was offer programs and performances, and we couldn't do that in a physical space, so we did that in a virtual space. I did one more COVID project, which sounds like a lot now looking back, but at the time, it was really important for me and to be responsive to the moment. And I think that's one of the things we can do as a kind of nimble archive. I should say that We are a humongous archive of materials, and we have a tiny staff. At the time, I was working as a sole curator. I now have one assistant thanks to the Getty. Um, we also have two archivists, a front desk person, and a director who's now on research sabbatical. So we are a tiny staff, which is a challenge in a lot of ways when trying to pull off a kind of full, robust art program, exhibition space programs, and archive, but also allowed me to be nimble in this moment, which felt really nice to be able to be responsive to what was happening. And so my first in-person show post kind of, or in the midst of COVID, I should say, we're still in the midst of COVID in a lot of ways, was called Six Linear Feet. And it was an open call, and I invited artists to make work about COVID and queerness. And so you're seeing Harris Kornstein's stamp collection, which he created of all the queer bars. On the left, Sandra Rosales made a sculpture called Glorious, which is kind of riff on glory holes, but for all kinds of bodies and people. The two drawings by Enrique Castellon, who was really who does these amazing measured drawings, and his sister had caught COVID early on as a shear worker, so thinking about COVID and its spread and kind of how it impacted. And I also showcased work by a group called Chosen Family, who was thinking a lot about queer family and connections and making work as a unit of four individual artists who had come together during this period. And some of the work through this project entered the collection, is now part of the collection. It's one of the things I've been continually trying to do to expand our collection without a formal acquisitions budget, is invite contemporary artists to kind of dialogue with the collection or with contemporary moments and bring it into the collection for future researchers, exhibitions, etc. We also had artists perform during Six Linear Feet called Amelia Bonde, and I've tried to put in this show not just a bunch of sterile installation photographs, which I think are amazing and showcase, the work that's on view, but also all the people that came to these different events. And it's not just to say, wow, what a robust community we have, but this effort that we've made to really make One Archives a community space, a community center, and bring in different audiences throughout. And I'm interested in the discussion and getting at, how we continue to do that work and how archives can function, or exhibition spaces can function during this next phase of kind of crises and different ways that we're in. So I showcase those just to say it's not just about art on the walls, but it's about people in the space. So I apologize if this starts to feel like kind of a laundry list of what we've done over the last 5 or so years, but I feel like it's really a nice way to showcase how active the archive is and how we work really hard to make it active and bring in different communities and think not just about the depth of what we have in our collection. We have lots and lots of materials. And yet, of course, like any archive, there are lots of gaps and there's lots of things that we're trying to bring in more. But there's also ways in which we can never fully kind of fix that problem by just bringing in more materials. There's ways in which that stuff just doesn't exist, or it existed, but it wasn't meant to be archived, or all sorts of other kind of structural systemic difficulties. Needless to say, I worked with a co-creator on this project, Aziz Sohail. We worked with, it's called Archival Intimacies, Queering Southeast Asian Diasporas. We worked with the community organization Satrang, which is a queer South Asian organization here in Los Angeles, and basically ended up celebrating their 25-year history of existence, telling their kind of origin story, how they got started. And so upstairs became a kind of 25-year history of Satrang and bringing it to being, and different kind of community organizers and things who've been a part of it, things that they felt were really even boring, like becoming a certified 501c3, but how important kind of certain structure all recognition became to their existence. And then Aziz and I invited several artists to make work and share work in our downstairs gallery. So you're seeing work on the left by Vinhai Kyo and on the right by Prima Jalishandra Sakuntabai, who are Cambodian and Thai origin. And thinking through both of their works really deal with their kind of family history, genocide, exile, and making work that really spoke to that. And so this is often a kind of strategy that we employ at the archive to both showcase a kind of specific history and also invite contemporary artists to share their own practice, sometimes working more specifically and sometimes less with the archival materials on view. And we hosted, of course, a big party as the opening, again, to try to showcase the archive as a community space and center to bring in folks who maybe weren't aware of our existence before and see themselves reflected on the walls. Through the process, too, thinking about people who had tapes in their basement of drag nights and other things and flyers and realizing that that's the kind of stuff that other people are actually interested in seeing, which is often, I'm sure, all of us who are working in the archives or with exhibitions on queer materials. Sometimes the challenge is to get people to realize that the stuff that they have cherished, or even think like they should just throw out, no one cares about it. Actually, people really want to see, and it helps us tell that history and can become part of the archive. So another project we undertook since I arrived, I really wanted to, and I'm still in the process of trying to more formalize a kind of artist in residence program here at the archive, but through different kind of means and machinations, we've been able to do that for the last several years. So this is a project that I undertook with UK-based artist Sarah Joy Ford, and it was titled Looking for Lesbians. This took place actually in a West Hollywood gallery, so the irony for those who are from LA was not lost in that there are not that many lesbians in West Hollywood, perhaps known as kind of Gay Boy Center. And so it was fun to put this over there. But basically, Sarah Joy Ford got really interested specifically in our lesbian pulp collection at the archive and undertook a series of artistic projects kind of exploring that. So you're seeing her here, photographs of the archive. She made made up a sorority for lesbians and then made this tracksuit. She works often in textiles and quilts, and then took photos in the archive. And here's a kind of interior space. She really looked specifically at some of kind of the lesbian publishing history that we have in Los Angeles and Southern California, working specifically with Jenny Wren and Caroline Weathers' lesbian line. You can see Sarah Joy Ford kind of took some of the typography of Lesbian Line, which is a magazine that those two women ran, and made it into the title for Looking for Lesbians. So this is often something that I'm trying to encourage artists to do, is look within our archive and then have that be a generative experience for making new works that we're also able to showcase. So here's a long view of it. We had some original archival materials on view. On the right, you're seeing Sarah Joy Ford made out of archival pulp, so stuff that was printed at the archive or additional. We shredded it and made new paper, and then on each one, she wrote one of the pulps we had and used Barbara Giddings' rating system, a quilt she made at the back, and then a mind map. So this looks like a poster, but it was actually a mural. She painted this directly onto the wall, and it was kind of her understanding of her own experience, having done research at the archive. And what I love most about it is how everything that all of the experiences that she had, going to Dyke Day, meeting with our interns, getting a haircut, all of those things that maybe people shoo away as not kind of archival research, made it into the mind map. And I think it's a real great reflection of what research can look like if research is thought about as kind of being part of the community. So of course that is like looking at boxes in the archive, but also is other experience. It's talking to people like Carolyn and Jenny and Anne Bradley and others who are part of that period. It's reading the pulp novels themselves. It's everything. And so I found this really inspiring and wanted to share this with others as a kind of version of what a full kind of conception of what an archival artistic project really looks like. There's Sarah Joy and the two women that I mentioned, whose both their archives are at the archive. In 2023, we celebrated the One Magazine's 70th anniversary, and so I created a show looking at that history. This took place at the LGBT Center in Los Angeles as part of One Institute's inaugural Circa. They're about to celebrate their third year this fall with another exhibition at the center. And so again, we can talk to you maybe in the question and answer about exhibition and exhibition spaces and bringing exhibitions to different spaces because of course it attracts different audiences as well. And lots of programs take place at the LGBT Center here in Los Angeles. And so having this exhibition on view that really went through the magazine's history and kind of the earliest kind of queer photographs that you see on some of the covers, but also some of the kind of difficulties of those moments on view for folks, and just exposing different audiences to that work. Unfortunately, One Archives was closed for a bit for building renovations, which was good. We needed some improvements like new lighting and centralized HVAC and an elevator, and we were able to reopen in January of 2024 with another artist-led installation called Blood Baby, which took over all of our spaces, including our garden space, spearheaded by artist Meg Foley. It really looked at bloodlines and gestation on a kind of geological scale, but also intimate 9-month birthing scale and thinking about queer family and chosen family in different avenues. And so we had a kind of installation of works and videos by Carmichael Jones. Meg Foley did an activation called Communion, which you're seeing on the right upstairs. We had a touch library, which had lots of interactive elements. And then outside, there's another view of it. Outside was a dance performance that took place in our garden space. And we had, I can't quite remember, about 12 or so viewings where people would sit in the garden, an intimate view of the dance performance. And this was not that we'd never used the garden space before, but this is a new one for us in terms of really using the outdoor garden that we have, which of course was the old sand volleyball court and part of the fraternity into these spaces. But I think one of the things that hopefully starts to become more and more relevant after I go through the kind of the past 5 years of the archive is how we really try to push the boundaries of our space. And are always up for a new challenge in terms of what we can do to make this possible. So this was funded in part by USC initiative, Visions and Voices, and got lots of students to come through and see the performance, something that they maybe would never have experienced otherwise. And I think got people really thinking about dance and live performance and queerness and community in new ways. We were really lucky to work with artist Robert Andy Coombs and mount a small photography show downstairs last summer. If you don't know his work, you should really check it out. Coombs is an amazing photographer who got his MFA from Yale a few years ago. He is paralyzed from basically the neck down, and so his kind of artistic practice, of course, requires a lot of communication and assistance, but he makes these really stunning works that are printed at large scale. Um, and he's had challenges in the past of exhibiting some of the works because I think some museums and spaces feel like the works are too explicit or sexy. And I felt like if we couldn't exhibit them in an archive like One Archives, then what really were we doing? You know, we have so many other works and collections that really spoke or are similar in some ways to what Robert's doing. And so it was a really great opportunity for us to showcase his work and led to a lot of really amazing discussions about kind of queer sexuality and disability and desire and just queer photography. And if you're not familiar with his work, you should really check it out. One of his works is currently on view at the Getty's amazing Queer Lens show. So if you're looking for more kind of queer art content and you're able to make it to LA, the Getty has 2 shows up right now, both Queer Lens, for which I wrote an essay in the catalog, and it was curated by Paul Martino, really great history of queer photography, and $3 Bill, which is at the Getty Research Center. Just a shout out to those shows and Robert's work. And here, unfortunately, we weren't able to have Robert in person for the opening. His caretaker fell through, which is a kind of real life consequence, of course, of needing to rely on others. But we were able to him in to talk about his work, and we had a really great, robust audience. This past fall, so almost a year ago, we opened our offering of the Getty Pacific Standard Time show, Sci-Fi Magic Queer LA, Sexual Science and the Imagination. For those who are maybe not as familiar, the Getty has now hosted three of these Getty Pacific Standard Times where they pick a theme. So this theme, the third theme was Art and Science Collide. And they invite lots of organizations throughout Southern California to put forward exhibitions and programs all around the theme. So we offered this one, which really grew out of an initial interest of our director, who you see bottom right in the center, Joseph Hawkins, who for a while had been tracking the fact that we had a lot of sci-fi materials at the archive. And of course, being a community archive started in the 1950s, sometimes things are in the collection, you wonder slightly, why are they here and do they really have a connection to queer history? And so this exhibition began kind of with that question, thinking about why we had so much sci-fi material. And in particular, Jim Kepner, who I showed earlier as a kind of founding father of the archive, was very involved with science fiction, and particularly science fiction fandom. And so what grew out of that initial interest really turned into a robust exhibition that explored how early sci-fi fans, including Jim Kepner and also this woman Lisa Ben, who was born Edith Ide, who went by Tigrina the Devil Doll as her sci-fi name, who ended up publishing the first ever kind of lesbian zine called Vice Versa in 1947, how the two of them, but really this robust sci-fi fan community had found a kind of queer space within sci-fi fandom, specifically the Los Angeles Science Fantasy Society, or LASFS, here in Los Angeles. And when you take a step back and you think about it, you think, oh, that makes a lot of sense. If you're queer and well, they wouldn't even identify as queer, but we would say now queer in the 1940s, 50s, and you don't fit in mainstream society, and you want to imagine other ways of being in other life. Sci-fi fandom is actually a really great place, and so this exhibition really looked at that early history and a lot of the visuals creating these magazines, but also the connections to the occult, and exposing people how, like Harry Hay, who's kind of known as a founding father of gay organizations, or co-founder of Mattachine Society, another organization like One, also played the organ for the OTO, the support occult organization in Pasadena, and people like Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard of Scientology are also involved. Jack Parsons meeting L. Ron Hubbard actually at LASFS, them getting involved in Aleister Crowley's religion Thelema, practicing sex magic rituals, Parsons' wife Cameron, especially after Parsons' death, being really interested in this religion, and a kind of whole queer circle that comes out of that, including Kenneth Anger and Curtis Harrington and others. And that's a whole other, obviously, specific history that I don't have time to kind of detail, but I will say, here's a couple install shots. We made a kind of map of all the people and how they're related. I just maybe said a lot of names that don't mean a whole lot to lots of people. Maybe one or two are recognizable, and that was even the case for me when I started on the project. And so myself and I worked on this project with Kelly Filleries, who became basically co-curator on the exhibition, and Quetzal Arevalo. We really wanted to help people kind of navigate that, and so we made that map, which you're seeing on the right side here, and a version of it is in the book as well. Here are a couple Cameron and Renata Druck's works that were on view. We were really lucky to have three, where you're seeing at the back there are three tarot cards from the Warburg made by Frida Harris in consultation with Crowley. We also recreated the first ever cosplay costumes that were worn by Myrtle Douglas and Forrest Ackerman. You can kind of get a sense there. And maybe I'll just say one thing about the programming. We had a night called Drag Me to Hell where, we couldn't resist not doing something on Halloween. And so Quetzal Arevalo really kind of spearheaded this effort. And we had several spooky drag performers and spooky tours and things. But I was going to say too, we made a catalog for this exhibition of the same name. And in addition to having a variety of essays, we also have that map that I was showing you in the book, alongside entries that have biographical entries for each individual or organization. And we felt that was a really important part of our process and our scholarly offering, is to hopefully this be the tip of the iceberg in terms of other folks getting interested in this topic. And we really wanted to share all of the knowledge that we had amassed through this process, through this publication. We were really lucky that it was really recognized for its kind of newness and scholarship. And I hope that some of you maybe got to see the exhibition, or if not, check out the exhibition catalog. All right, we're almost through to the present. As you can tell, we're getting more and more contemporary as we go. Hopefully, again, and I should say the PST exhibition took place at the Fisher Museum on USC's main campus. We didn't have a space large enough to host an exhibition like that. It also was able to attract a new audience, of course, being on main campus, but also near the train station. And we were really lucky to have over 4,000 view visitors to the exhibition throughout its run. In last winter, we worked with another organization, Kaya Press, which is an Asian American press, actually now located also within USC's bounds, but has been around for 30 years. And so kind of in some ways similar to the Satrong exhibition, they had already been working, Kaya Press had already been working on celebrating their history and working with an artist, amazing artist, Alan Nakagawa here in Los Angeles. He read each of Kaya's 78 plus books and made a micro opera for each one. And so initially they were just going to put those micro operas on view. And of course, once they found us as a venue for the exhibition, I said, well, why don't we also tell your 30-year history? Because I think that those things are also always richer together. And so we were able to tell their 30-year history, which Sun Young Kim came up with as Portrait of a Publisher as a political project, 30 Years of Kaya Press, and told their story of how they got together, why they publish, what they publish, as well as Alan's micro operas and sound sculptures in our downstairs gallery. And we were really able to activate this on opening night, where Alan invited many other artists to share the stage with him, performing some of that micro operas live while also kind of riffing and playing other pieces together. And then everyone was able to buy some Kaya Press books as well as learn about Kaya's history through the upstairs exhibition. And this was a really great partnership, in part to showcase Kaya and what they've been up to for the last 30 years. And one of the earliest books, or the first book they published, called Rolling the R's, is a kind of queer novel by novelist R. Zamora. And so it's not that every single book that Kaya has published is queer, but we really felt a kind of synergy or similarity with what they're doing in terms of how for them publishing is a political project, and for us at the archive, archiving and keeping materials is a kind of political project, especially when you're singly, doubly, triply marginalized within a community, and trying to keep that history and promote kind of new scholarship or new artists through that. So I think this is a great example for us in terms of different ways that we're thinking about partnering and bringing a different community. And really, hopefully, another question maybe we can get to is kind of how we all define kind of queerness in this variety of ways. I'm always really attuned to how we kind of keep thinking about historical specificity of queerness and using the appropriate terms, and not kind of erasing any lived individual experience, but also how queer as a kind of non-normative term that can encompass a lot also allows for these kind of partnerships or relationalities that otherwise wouldn't be possible. And now to our current exhibitions. So we're really lucky to have two shows. Downstairs right now is a show called Fairy Prince by Halo Starling. You're seeing them on the left there or in the center. They were really interested in the Radical Fairies, a group that got founded by Harry Hay and John Burnside. And they made works based on an archival collection we have here. So you're seeing that in the archival case below, and a kind of view into their exhibition. This is just kind of small shots before we even have formal installation photography. But they started doing their research on archival collection, having kind of artists in residence, and thinking about radical fairies and sanctuary space and kind of trans identity and inclusivity, and ended up making a video piece, which you're not really seeing in this view, but also some collages and altar and screen prints, and hopefully you get a bit of the texture of the whole exhibition. And something that we're always really encouraging is kind of exploring kind of archival practice and contemporary history through a variety of mediums, whatever medium speaks to the artist. So that's the downstairs. And then upstairs, in part to showcase the breadth of the kind of art collection we have at the archive. We have over 8,000 works of art, which are paintings, lots of photographs, works on paper, a few sculptures, and other things. I curated a show called The Space We Take, Portraits from the Archive. I will say I was struggling a bit about what kind of exhibition people needed right now. Um, and I thought that portraits were a great avenue. One, have lots from different periods in art history of what we collect, but also portraits are kind of this reflection of where we've been and that other people have been there before us. And so we just put on view a selection of portraits from across the archive. You're seeing an E. Fowler, one painting from a recent donation of Hubner Hosner paintings, Amos Badacher, a photographer based in Baltimore. And there's the kind of one view is on the mezzanine. That's Quetzal Arevalo on the left and our summer intern Jonathan Longhayden on the right. And you can kind of see how the space unfolds in the archive. And if you excuse the kind of not so great install photographs of our different walls, hopefully what you can see from these views is the kind of variety. We were playing with scale, we were playing with paintings, prints, photographs, and trying to showcase really what we have at the archive in all sorts of different ways. And the fact that I put one Gary Brown work on view, but we have lots and lots. of John Quitman, we have one on view, but we have many, many. And so I hope to do more of those kinds of things, especially, I didn't say this at the beginning, but maybe I'll say this now, is that our um, art collection is harder to search than some of our other collections right now. That's something that we're working on and it's in progress. But our book collection and our periodicals are now searchable through the USC Library catalog. All of our finding aids are searchable through the Online Archive of California. But our art collection still is a bit more challenging and you have to talk to one of us on staff here. And so one of the ways we try to showcase that more and more is through exhibitions, ours, but also through loans, other exhibitions, loaning our works and putting them on view in the meantime. So I'll probably stop the formal presentation there. That's hopefully enough of an overview of the archive, what we've been up to, so kind of our values, and I hope that we can have a robust discussion about what it means to work in a queer archive, the kinds of work we're doing, the kind of challenges we're facing, etc. Thanks so much. And while maybe we're getting set up, I just see one question in the chat, which is a very easy answer. Are there queer zines at the archive? Is there a queer zine collection? The answer is yes. We try to collect as many queer zines as possible. Obviously, that's an ever-growing collection. We have an amazing archivist, Michael Oliveira, who works very hard to continue to collect for our periodicals, including queer zines.
Please join me in giving Alexis a round of applause, a Zoom round of applause. Thank you, Alexis. A beautiful, beautiful collection. Alexis is going to serve as a moderator for the next round, but certainly please continue with any other questions. See, there is one in the Q&A.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's the one I just answered, the queer zines one.
gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, let me clear that. Okay, well, I think Alexis, let's move on to the next to the panel discussion.
Thanks so much for joining. It's great to meet in this format. I feel like it's always funny the ways that we all meet. I could read your bios, but instead, I think I would just invite you both to share a little bit about your background, who you are, how you got to the position you're in, and maybe if there's anything that you're particularly excited to talk about based on what I just shared or totally other things. I'm hoping this will be a robust discussion about our current moment and what we're in, and I will try to filter in the questions that roll in through Q&A and chat. But if either of you guys see those, please as well. So whoever wants to start.
I can get us going. So, hi everyone, I'm Gabrielle. Use they, he, and she pronouns. Thank you all for having me today. I'm the head archivist at Lambda Archives of San Diego, which is our local LGBT community archive here. I recently got my master's in library science at the University of Washington in Seattle. I just graduated last year. I went to Scripps College for my undergrad in media studies, which is where I kind of got my first taste of archives and libraries, but didn't quite realize that's what I wanted to do until beyond college. I actually had worked at Lambda Archives as a grant-funded kind of archival assistant prior to grad school. So that's when my interest in archives really solidified and kind of came together and kind of helped support in my graduate applications. But it's exciting to be here. I've worked in community archives, university archives, and as well as private archives up in Seattle. So I have a little bit of a taste of all different types of environments, workflows, material, and stuff like that. So that's a little bit about my bio.
Awesome.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, my bad. Mercury retrograde is definitely Mercury retrograde right now. But no, hey everybody, how's everybody doing? I hope everybody's doing good through these transformational times that we got going on in the world. My name is Crew. I'm the founder of the Black Lesbian Archives. I founded the Black Lesbian Archives about 8 years ago, June 25th, 2017 in Williamsburg, Virginia at the time, and then recently moved to, at the time, to Chicago, and I was a Black lesbian, but also breaking up. I'm breaking up. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, you're back now. You were breaking up for a moment. We got Virginia and then some.
I'm so sorry, y'all. I'm sorry, the connection here is real spotty. So let me know if it breaks up again and I'll play it back. But yeah, I moved to the reason why I was starting the Black Lesbian Archives is because I wanted to know more about myself and who I was as a Black lesbian. So I started doing some digging on the internet and tried to dig and try to find, information about Black lesbians, globally and things. And I came to find that I had to be very specific in what I found or what I was looking for and what I was researching, but there was just a lack of information. And so that day on June 25th, 2017, I decided to go ahead and start the Instagram, the website, the Facebook, and everything that I could find about Black lesbians on the web, I just started posting because I was like, if I'm looking for this information, then I know that there's other people looking for this information too. It also started after watching, there's this, I forget the name of who shot it, but it's still on YouTube. If you want to look, it's free. It's called The Last Lesbian Bars in America. And that also was a very inspiring documentary that I watched. And I was like, yeah, we need more spaces for us to be able to commune, especially for POC, to be able to commune and be and know more about ourselves from, previous ancestry and also just current older lesbians and elder lesbians that came before us as well too. So yeah, from there, went to Chicago, did an exhibition at Affinity Community Services in Chicago, which one is the oldest women LGBT that I know that's still running the building, and did that. And I didn't realize the the impact that it was going to have, but it was all types of lesbians there. It was older lesbians, young lesbians, like 80-year-olds and 14-year-olds. It was amazing. The mayor came out. It was dope. And so from then, something that started from curiosity just kind of spiraled into mini exhibitions, traveling exhibitions, online exhibitions as well, and just kind of streamrolled now into community-based more community-based archival works from the collective group versus me and other people. So that's a little bit about the Black Lesbian Archives. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to be in conversation with both of you. I feel like all the work we're doing is so important and varied in ways and very similar in others. So I have lots of questions to ask, but I will continue to ask questions from the chat if there are any. And so I feel like one that's come up is funding. Holly asked, is funding the primary reason your staff is so small for such a large archival holding? So I'll answer about that for one, but I feel like maybe we can talk about funding and the challenges, how you're funded, how you get things, how things happen, in this current environment. Yes. Not just the archive, but in general, what we're all thinking and doing. So obviously the archive, um, yeah, primarily our staff is so small because of funding. We definitely could have a much larger, more robust staff and do more. We do a lot with a few people. As I said, we've been really going after grant funding, like all of us, in different ways. And that was in part how I was able to get an assistant. We are funded by USC right now, and so they fund the staff positions, so the archivist, front desk, my own position as curator. And then grant funding mostly supports additional staffing. So we've had lots of different kind of short-term grant funded positions on the curatorial and archival side, as well as a lot of additional exhibition support through organizations and foundations like the Getty or Warhol or others that support those kind of endeavors. We're in the process of endowing positions. You may have seen news announcements that we recently were able to find donors to endow our director position, which is one of the ways we're trying to ensure our longevity, and that we have additional staffing or enough staffing at a bare minimum. But there are many other staff positions I wish you had, and hopefully we're able to continue to grow that. But that's a little bit how we operate. So I'm interested to hear both about Lambda and Black Lesbian Archives. And I'm sure not just me, everyone else wants to hear too.
Yeah, I can speak a bit about Lambda Archives. Just a quick background. We were actually founded in 1987 by local community activist Jess Jessup, just as a completely volunteer-led project that started in his garage. It was really born out of that early HIV/AIDS crisis, in the sense where people's stuff was getting thrown away, and Jessup, as well as other community members, really recognized the rich cultural history of the materials. So throughout the majority of its existence, the archive has really just been volunteer run, pretty much just surviving on grants and donations. We've only had really paid positions within the past 6 to 10 years or so out of the whole history of the organization. I would say a lot of our funding remains the same, where it's mostly from grants or donations. We usually seek out grant funding from local, city, and county, as well as local organizations here in San Diego. We also apply for a lot of grants through the state, especially the state library. That's one of our biggest sources of funding for this year, which gives us close to 100,000. But our budget is probably way smaller than what Archives is. I'm one of 3 staff members. I'm the only full-time person. We have other 2 part-time people, our managing director, and then our engagement and outreach person as well. We get a lot of kind of 4-course credit interns every semester, and we have a slew of volunteers that are really kind of the backbone to our organization. We do occasionally get grants that allow us to hire student workers for a period of time, but that's usually on a temporary basis. So I think our expectation about funding for this year, a lot of things have fallen through even at the local and state level because of people realizing the budgets were way overinflated past couple of years and having to correct it now, on top of all the very wild federal stuff happening as well. So we've had to make adjustments. My managing director was a full-time position, but she cut back just out of an abundance of caution to make sure that we had abundance of funding to kind of last us through the rest of the year. So it varies a lot. It's definitely not a stable financial environment, unfortunately, but we make do, trying to find different low-cost, no-cost solutions for some of the archival stuff we're doing, or programs or things like that. So that's kind of a little overview of where a couple of our funding sources come from. San Diego Pride's been a kind of long-term grant supporter of us as well. So it looks different. Different organizations locally probably are the biggest sources as well.
Yeah, we're all hustling a bit. Maybe Gabrielle, too, you can share just a little bit about the kinds of collections you have at the Lambda Archive.
Yeah, for sure. So we have, I would say, close to 300 or 400 like individual collections made up of like probably several hundred more accessions within those as well. So kind of parts of a whole. We just collect from local community members, kind of what they've donated to us over the years. We don't really, we've never really purchased or acquisitions material, with the exception of maybe books. We have a lending library here at Lambda Archives. We have papers, we have posters, prints, artwork, audiovisual material, photographs, t-shirts, buttons, pins, cassettes, etc. We definitely have a variety of materials as well as banners. Like that's not always something you see in different places, but we have a pretty limited space. Our stacks is like effectively 3 kind of smaller rooms. So it's interesting trying to kind of like balance how to store certain things depending on size and material and things like that. So that's kind of the variety of stuff that we collect.
Amazing. All right, crew, maybe both funding and archival collection amassing.
Yeah, so funding over the years is kind of like Gabrielle, just kind of in and out. A lot of it has been self-funded from projects and things that I've done. But the majority, I would say, of the BLA, since it's been alive, a lot of that was coming straight out of my pocket. It was a labor of love. So I think as a recent, like doing exhibitions and things like that has allowed me to kind of put a little bit more time into like pushing some of that funding towards BLA and Black Lesbian Archives and things like that. But I'm the only one that's actually working on the Black Lesbian Archives. I don't have like a staff or anything like that connected, but I have done a lot of collaborations. I've gotten support from donations, even like digital community grants, specifically for the Ashe project. I got a grant for that. But most of it is like self-project, self-funded, out of pocket. I used to be a bike messenger for Uber. And so a lot of the funds, especially when I first started, I was on that bike tooting it, trying to, get stuff so I could print and build stuff out. Yeah, passing out flyers. Yeah, for the archives and stuff. So it's really a mixed bag. But I've been trying to like do more things that I can actually bring in, because right now in the process of should I spill the beans? Okay, so right now I'm in the process of building out Omeka. It's a digital repository for digital archiving and things like that. So it's a backseater project. Don't tell nobody. It's in the works right now, but I've also turned it over now, like this year, as a part of the digital memory project that I'm doing now is for a collective effort for us to be preserving the archival material. So we can actually, can y'all hear me?
Yeah,
I think it froze.
we can hear you.
Okay. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. It keeps freezing on me, but I'm hoping that this collective effort of people also, bringing in their stories and things like that will help kind of see that for the most part, as far as like storage and stuff, I got a couple things of storage units, back home, so it's real scattered. Like physical stuff has been some storages that I had there was one in particular, not gonna get into that because it's gonna take me off, but I did lose a storage, but I do have 2 other storages that I have been holding some of the archival material. And most of the stuff is digital. So right now my effort is hopefully when everybody starts to put also their information on like the Padlet, which I just started this new thing that I heard about Padlet where people can go in without an account and like put in information for, digital archival material. I'm hoping like every month I can actually compile that material all in one place and then people can actually download it to their computer. So if you want to print that out, you can print it out as like a chat book if you want to, or you can just print out that information so we all have it on our computers and it's not just housed in one place. Because that's a big, I can go all day about it, but that's funding and storage kind of things. What was the other question?
I think you answered both of them. Yeah, what your archive is. Some people, I think you just answered the one question in the Q&A that was asking about permanent physical space. Do you have any, and if not, what your goals are? Maybe I'll segue that into our next question from the Q&A, and I know there's still a question in the chat, so I'm getting to that. But Madison asked, how do LGBTQ plus or archives, especially academic college affiliated archives, navigate community outreach? So maybe a question about community outreach crew. I think you're already talking about community outreach in terms of kind of even crowdsourcing, it sounds like, information and getting that into appropriate avenues of sharing. So you can speak more about that. And also Gabrielle and I can answer maybe about community outreach and what we're doing and some strategies. And maybe also I'd love us to share like some challenges and maybe we can kind of think about how we navigate those.
So you mean like community outreach to get people to submit to the archive?
Yeah, in your case, it sounds like, yeah, that's what you're interested in, right? Is getting people to.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I think what I'm learning, I mean, specifically for the Black Lesbian Archives, I'm focusing on and it's really specific why I'm focusing on this time period, because people ask me, why do you just focus on this particular time period, crew? And I'm just like, well, this late 60s into the 90s was like a pure time for community organizing. It was a huge time. I mean, we talk about the revolutionary 60s and all throughout the 70s and the 90s, there was a lot of uprising against the governments and the systems and things like that. And specifically for Black lesbians, I mean, was literally on the forefront of organization and getting us all together so we could, and when I say getting us all together, I'm not just talking about in the fight, right? I'm also talking about not only that, but like, having homes and houses for people to be able to stay in for the free, teaching people about mental health issues and working through, women and children, people who are dealing with like, pregnancy and childhood trauma and spirituality, like karate, doing like martial arts and self-defense courses and things like that. Like it was a global thing before they threw in the crack epidemic and, the AIDS and all that kind of stuff into the mix to kind of mix everybody up. And so I focus on that specifically because I'm like, if we can really understand that era, we can use some of the tools that they left us in that particular era. I'm not saying that we can't reinvent the wheel, but what I'm saying is we can use some of that knowledge and that wisdom from the past to bring it into what we're not even going into, what we're in right now, literally over another cycle that we're into right now. So yeah, as far as like community outreach, I guess I encourage people within the community outreach to understand, especially even in current things that are happening right now, that the stories are also just as important. We look at, I think sometimes outside of ourselves for these stories. You might talk about myself sometimes, I'm learning how to share certain things, but we kind of look outside of ourselves to like, Audre Lorde, and don't get me wrong, it's my girl, but we also have stories that we can also be telling and sharing at this time. So that's also being encouraged, not just with the elders, but also currently when it comes to present day outreach as well, which I did a memory capsule project back in May. If y'all want to check that out, I'll actually drop my website so y'all can see a little bit what that's about too. So a little bit about that, yeah.
Gabrielle, you want to answer question about navigating community outreach?
Yeah, I will say mostly from my perspective, because we do have a dedicated person who does a lot of this, but kind of what I've seen is we have a lot of relationships with different places, such as San Diego Public Library, the different local universities for our internship programs. We have a huge network of our volunteers and like past folks that have been involved with the organizations who can spread information about our events or programming that we're doing. We obviously use social media like Instagram and Facebook. We don't really veer into TikTok or anything like that, but we try to like utilize those platforms to just kind of share information about events or collaborations or other things like that. We find that collaborating with people on events can extend our reach pretty far depending on those folks' network and how they can kind of advertise for something as well. we do this really awesome yearly intergenerational oral history project where we pair youth with local elders in the community. And that's a really great kind of connective thread that my coworker kind of leads every year that definitely lets people know about our organization. I think our kind of biggest struggle is like, we are pretty small, obviously, and like only so many people currently know about us, but we do try to keep kind of enhancing our reach further and further as we do new collaborations or new projects. We had done for our last year's kind of fall winter exhibit a collaboration with a local house, the House of St. James, on a really beautiful exhibit kind of showcasing a lot of the different histories of different performers and the groups, as well as their kind of textiles and clothing and things like that. And we actually co-hosted like a Kiki ball with them. And that was a really exciting way to like kind of connect the communities together that might have not really had much overlap before. So I think those types of efforts through the exhibits or through the programming where collaboration really allows us to like enhance both the quality of what we're doing as well as our reach to different communities and different people locally and further out.
For sure. No, we found the same thing. And I think the question maybe in the chat was a bit about as a university space, how we've community outreach. So same things really apply. One Archivist is also in a bit of a unusual situation that we were a community archive for decades before we became part of University of Southern California. So, we have a huge kind of robust community audience before our 2010 affiliation with USC. So I'd say almost the inverse or reverse has been more challenging for us, and something that I've been trying to take on since arriving is how do we integrate more within the USC community and have both those outreaches, because people within USC still seem to attend classes or in departments and don't even know that we exist as one of the special collections on campus, which is wild. We're trying to attend more events on campus to get our name out there, LGBT events or kind of initial kind of orientation that allows students to realize that the archive is here for them. But in terms of community outreach, yeah, similar to everything that you, Gabrielle, and crew are saying, I think collaborating with different organizations like Kaya Press's event or Kaya Press exhibition opening, we had over 230 people, which is a lot for us in this space, in part because we were able to draw on Kaya's community, our community, Alan Nakagawa's community, other communities, and bring people into the space that haven't been here before. We definitely also do see repeat visitors, which is great. People find out about us through one event because they're affiliated with XYZ, and then they realize, oh, one's actually a pretty cool space. I want to come back and bring friends, and hopefully, that happens more and more. But hopefully our goal, and I think all of ours really is through the breadth of the different events that we offer, different people find space and see themselves reflected in what we're doing and want to join. We also use social media, especially shout outs to my assistant and interns who really help try to showcase what we're doing and appeal to different audiences. We are definitely, still learning kind of where to attract people and trying to keep all the different generations coming to the space. So we still keep up with Facebook, which has a different generation and viewership than like Instagram. We dip our toe into TikTok, but we don't have time to do that all the time. We also have a newsletter that's for everyone, hopefully. So sign up if you haven't. It's on our website. We'll only tell you about upcoming events and things. And so I feel like for all of us, it's kind of an ongoing challenge of bringing in community. But collaborations seem to be the most important, and the breadth of offerings. So continue to offer a variety. There's another question in the chat that just says, I'd love to hear more about exhibiting archival material in non-archive spaces to draw in people who don't know about archives in order to connect them to their histories. So maybe all of us can answer that one about putting materials in non-archival spaces, or how we strategize to attract people to those spaces. I feel like everyone's already kind of
Yeah,
showcased.
no, most definitely. So I can speak to a couple different spaces, but specifically I'll talk about the first exhibition that I did with Affinity Community Services in Chicago. That space, shout out to Tracy Bain. first and foremost, and also Imani Rupert Gordon, which is actually, I think she might be, I need to say what's up to her, but she's at the lesbian, I can't remember. She's somewhere in Oakland or somewhere in Berkeley, at the Lesbian National somewhere. But she was at Affinity when I first came to Chicago, and Affinity Community Services is on the south side of Chicago. It's a small space, but it's a very intimate space. And a lot of people have fell through Affinity throughout the years. It's like 30 plus, I think, if I'm not mistaken, 30 to 35 plus at this point. And so when I thought of actually doing the exhibit, I was like, well, this would be the perfect place to do it because, I mean, everybody is connected and has been connected to this particular space. So I wanted to make it something that was intimate, something that was very intimate, something that was a gathering space, and thinking about like what spaces people commune and go to. And so that was like a space that people came to. I knew people would go or come to this place specifically. And it was also the first time they've ever had a Black lesbian exhibition in that space. So that also was something I think, especially if we go back to the topic of like community outreach, everybody's like, wait a minute, like a Black lesbian exhibit, so so it put everybody back in the space that they came to, and allow people to connect with people that they hadn't seen in years, and stories that they hadn't seen in years as well too, but it was a familiar and comfortable space. So that was I can speak to that space of Affinity being like a traditional space that you can be in. You can make an exhibition, y'all, anywhere. It doesn't have to be specifically it could be in a museum, but you could do it at the house. You know what I'm saying? Like you could make exhibitions, you can do it in the park, you can do it, anywhere. So don't feel like you have to limit yourself to, and that's a part of what grassrooting is. You don't have to limit yourself to a specific place. As long as it has a place to put something up or put something down, you can make that into an archival exhibition or space. So yeah. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah.
I would say for Lambda, we do have a small exhibit space that we typically use in-house, but I don't think we've had that many purely us external exhibits at other places. We did have an exhibit that we contributed very heavily to several years ago at the San Diego History Center in Balboa Park, which kind of charted broader LGBT history in San Diego. So a lot of our material was there for that, which was a great kind of audience to connect with. But we have lended materials, for instance, for a lobby display for college production of Rent at SJSU. So that was a really great opportunity to kind of showcase some of our material and how it relates to theatrical productions. We've lended materials for events to kind of connect the archives with different recent events. I would say not quite the same as the exhibits, but we often will table at different events and kind of showcase some of our material. So we just tabled, for instance, at San Diego Pride this year. And we brought out a handful of our archival banners, kind of showcasing some of local history there. We do try to avoid bringing that much kind of delicate material, I would say, but we've also brought reproductions of kind of documents related to the founding of San Diego Pride as well. We like to kind of showcase those little things as well. A lot of our tabling involves crafting and art projects where we actually will kind of print out copies of photos and other materials from the archive that people can collage with and kind of interact with the material that way. So even though it's not quite an exhibit, I think that's a cool way that at these events that people can still engage with what's actually in the archive in a reproduced form. So I would say that's kind of our experience with non-archive exhibit spaces.
Yeah. I mean, same here. Twofold answer to that question. The one is obviously we've done exhibitions not at our archive center. So I was mentioning the LGBT Center in LA, which especially one institute has been partnering with, which is great because they have tons of events there and they have host, groups and things. So lots of folks come through. But as Gabrielle is saying too, to be a little considerate or careful about what kinds of materials we can put on view there, or a lot of reproductions or duplicates. So as Crew is saying, there's a way to make it all work. It just depends on what the space is and how you go about doing it. we partner with more kind of institutional museums in our case, like the Fisher Museum, or we've had stuff in the past at Pacific Design Center or other spaces that are more museum focused. And so, of course, that attracts a different audience as well. We're really big fans here, and myself especially, of kind of blending and blurring the boundaries between art and archive and showcasing kind of in its entirety, especially in museum forward spaces, even in our exhibition spaces here at the archive. I hope that people don't think like, oh, I'm just seeing the archive on the wall, but we really do work really hard to make them visually engaging and tell a story, especially through the visual content that you see. So ways to do that as well. And those spaces work in lots of ways in inviting contemporary artists to look at archive materials in the collection and make new works and put those on view. I'll shout out not to any of our archives here, but the Herstory Archive in Brooklyn just brought materials to like the New York Liberty Pride game at Barclays Center, which I think is kind of awesome. So on this, like, you can bring the archive anywhere, and I think a lot of I'll speak for myself, and the exhibitions that we've been doing is really to showcase the kind of variety that we want to collect in an archive. I think there's an ongoing educational process through putting exhibitions together and on view and in these traditional and non-traditional spaces, even though I don't even like that distinguishing between those spaces of what kinds of things we will collect and what can be archival. So much of, people come in and say like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you collected XYZ buttons, posters, flyers, banners, home videos, all that stuff that so many folks think like, oh, it's just particular to me, like no one else would be interested at all. And that's, of course, the stuff that is hard to find, amazing to collect. It's a viewpoint into a moment in time that is otherwise hard to get access to, that can speak to periodicals or other archival collections that we have. So, so much of the work, I think, of those exhibitions or programs is really just educating people about what can be contained in an archive and what can't. I mean, I think, as I was saying before, it's important at the same moment we're saying, yeah, everything can be put on view and everything can be in an exhibition, but there's stuff that just is lost. And there is that we can all go about kind of highlighting those gaps, understanding why they exist, and trying to fill them in other ways. And that's a kind of totally philosophical conversation direction that we could go in, but I just want to say I think that we've answered all the questions from the Q&A in the chat. So if anyone else has anything, please put those in the Q&A button box or the chat, and we'll be happy to answer them. I'm sure you can ask questions broadly about how all of us got in these positions. Anything else you want to know about, we'd be happy to answer. And while everyone is thinking about those questions, I'll ask Crew kind of spilled the beans a little bit, but what everyone is up to next, the challenges you're facing, and the things that feel most important to do in this moment.
What's next? So I kind of spilled the beans a little bit about the Omeka site, which I was trying to hold that through the summer. But if y'all see this, be quiet in the chat, okay? Don't be telling everybody about it. But I'm hoping to drop it into the fall. So right now, the digital memory project that I started sometime last year, I'm basically using this as a way to collect as much information as I can from the community. And then basically taking a lot of information that I already have, but also from the community, and actually uploading it to the Omeka site. So at least we have a digital, like I said, repository of this archival work as well. I also want to kind of piggyback for a second, just quickly, and mention that I did have a trifold named Wilhelmina. And whoever has Wilhelmina, you will be dealt with. Okay, she's gone now, but basically it was like a pop-up trifold that I had, and basically, it had all the information, had a calendar that flipped out on it. You know what I'm saying? It was beautiful, and somebody took it, but another conversation for another time. But I think one of the challenges I feel like that come up a lot of times is, especially physically, I like to consider myself as a mover and shaker. Okay. And when I say mover and shaker, I mean I move a lot. Right now, I'm currently not in the US now. So I travel quite a bit. And so storage sometimes I feel like until I find like a place or the places that like a physical building or a space can actually be like, for example, i.e. like a lesbian horror story archives, because I love homes. And I think the archival, I have a vision in my head of the archival collection being in a home space because it's lesbian is home, you know? So it's something that I would like to do, but it's not something that's feasible for me right now. So I think that's been one of the biggest challenges of like, because I do believe in digital and I do believe that it's a great way for us to be able to like widespread and connect from different countries and different places and different parts of the diaspora, yes. But I do think that being somewhere where you can actually physically meet, where you can physically touch, where you can physically hold, I think that it has a different type of resonance than to just be, you know, digitally going through information. I feel like you retain the information better when you're actually in a physical space. You can relax, you can connect with people, you know, you can cry, you know, with other people if you want to, because the archives is spiritual, y'all. It's not just like going through papers and things like that. Like you'll be doing some research and some digging and you'll find some stuff and just be like, because it can be heavy, you know, some of the stuff that yeah. So
we need both.
yeah,
We need the digital and the physical for sure.
yes, definitely. So I think that's one of the challenges I think I would say facing moving forward is like where would the physical space be? And then right now we're in the height of censorship, you know, online. So it's like they trying to silence us in the physical space and getting rid of demolishing and burning our physical spaces. And then we have to deal with censorship and things like that. So one of the things, I'll just drop this little dime, and if you want to look deeper into it, you can. Right now I'm working on a project called History Pen. But one of the things that I talked about, and I'll drop that in the link too. Actually, you can find it, but it's History Pen, but also it's a collaboration with this organization, or I guess collective, called Filecoin. And Filecoin is I would say a digital cloud system that is being built. It's built now, but is being built out. So basically it's like a blockchain of information that cannot be erased. It has to go through what I like to call the Red Rover of contacts and connections in order for it to actually be censored or deleted off of the web. And I know everybody would be like, well, you can be hackers. Hackers can be anywhere and all that kind of stuff. I get it, y'all, but at least it's a step digitally. So we're not, you know, if at any given time they want to, you know, delete information, turn off the internet, or if they want to just delete something, a full site, at least we have a cloud repository that still stays and also can be switched in between different places and different, you know, different countries and different places and things like that. And we can share that information too. So let's say I have something here, you know, or had something in the US and then now I'm in Africa, you know. So if we want to share something else with somebody else, we can share that information in between different collectives and communities. So if one gets deleted, there's also another repository that still stands. So that's another thing that I feel like is happening now too. So
Yeah, safeguarding has to take many forms right now.
most definitely.
Yeah, I would say for kind of current and upcoming things here at Lambda, we've been having this exhibit up called Writing as Resistance, kind of exploring the local publishing presses, bookstores, current bookstores, now closed bookstores, and also highlighting our library collection in this kind of current of like library book, like in book censorship specifically. So that's been a really great activation. We've done a lot of programming around that with local artists and writers, which has been really great to also further connect people in the contemporary moment. Our kind of next exhibit this coming fall will actually be focusing on the San Diego chapter of ACT UP, which was an organization that did a lot of organizing around the HIV and AIDS epidemic earlier on in terms of fighting for political recognition, medical recognition, things like that. So really excited to kind of highlight that in the exhibit space and have programming surrounding that again as well. Other kind of non-programming related stuff that I'm like currently trying to kind of parse through is actually just kind of how to maximize our physical space, because we have a lot of material, a lot of duplicate material, which I'm trying to help weed out, as well as more effectively store the material we do have. so we can actually keep accepting materials from our community members through the future, which I'm really excited to kind of help facilitate. Another big issue that I've been kind of trying to remedy and figure out is digital storage and how to like present digital materials in an effective manner. It's like one of those things where like, yeah, the digital space can be so democratizing and open and like allow people to access stuff, but it's extremely expensive and it's really hard to like find the right thing when you have such a limited budget that really works well. Something that like we've been doing for years is like we've been making our finding aids on Word docs, right? And I'm trying to like kind of come up with a more effective system to get us on the Online Archive of California so people can see what we have. I think that's kind of been one of the hardest things is like folks don't really know what we do have here. And I'm trying to help make sure that folks can see, like, for instance, an inventory of all our periodicals, which are so rich and so juicy and fun to look through, as well as all the archival material in general. So those are kind of smaller things I'm trying to kind of parse through in terms of workflows and kind of having a more effective manner on making our stuff discoverable as well. Kind of like our digital asset management system has been kind of a hassle for me over time. So I'm trying to kind of figure out a more effective way of having our digitized material go online. Our current grant projects that's kind of ramping up is digitizing a lot of Black and BIPOC material from the archives. A lot of material focused also on Tijuana and Northern Baja, California, which I'm really excited to make more accessible to folks. I'm having 2 student workers kind of work on the digitizing of that. And then it will also kind of go online as well, both through our kind of digital collections platform, as well as San Diego State University, who's our partner on this project. So those are kind of like the upcoming things. The challenges is always like time and funding and space. And I think that's everyone's problem, backlog. I don't think those things ever really go away, but one of the things I'm really trying to be intentional about, which I think will set the organization up really well for long term, no matter how long I end up being here for, is documentation and like really well spelled out workflows. I think that's something that's always really been lacking here because we've changed hands so many times over the years. Different archivists, different just like leaders of the space, some with and without archival training. So having just a really well spelled out, like, how do we do this? How do we catalog that? How do we process this? Those types of things can really help ensure the longevity of the work that we're doing as it changes through hands, as I have different interns and volunteers and things like that. So sometimes it's the little things that kind of add up to make it a more useful long-term venture. So those are kind of a couple of the different current and upcoming challenges and projects.
Oh, thanks for sharing all of it. I mean, I feel like Gabrielle and crew done a good job of, talking about the sexy and the unsexy parts of archival work and exhibition work that all come hand in hand that are necessary. I mean, same for us. With lots of upcoming exhibitions and programs. Storage, both physical and digital, remains a challenge. The digital storage being much more expensive than people think, and difficulty in navigating that. And digitizing stuff is a great answer. And we also have an ongoing Cal State grant. But we're never going to be able to digitize everything unless we had, a bajillion $1 million basically and huge amounts of online storage space. So what do we do? I'm working a lot on fundraising recently, both as you're saying from kind of grant funding sources like foundations, but also individual donors who are able to ensure the longevity of positions here. We'd love to do things like have an acquisitions fund, which we don't have and haven't had since we started, and other things. Make research fellowships an option where people could apply for funding to come do research here. An ongoing effort to make things more and more accessible. As I said, a long-term goal of making the artwork more searchable than it is right now. Also considering more kind of upcoming open calls for exhibitions and bringing new people into the archive that way. So lots as a challenge of just how much can one person do in a day, but where the priorities are right now, and it's clear that spaces like ours are needed as much as ever in the current federal environment. I don't know if either of you have questions for each other or for me. We have lots of great love happening in the chat, and I'm remembering other spaces like in Atlanta and other places, but no other questions. Oh, here's a common question. I'll read that for everybody. I just have to keep scanning all the different locations. Glad that y'all are having this Zoom event and grateful that I'm on Crew's email list. Would also like to discuss some ideas I have about historically preserving community events and orgs that no longer exist in Black lesbian community. We'll follow up with Crew. We want to give affirmation that many Black queers, especially on the West Coast, are making things happen and open to more. Yes, also Bay Area Lesbian Archives, obviously a shout out as a great institution. And also considering MFA and MLS, so please share any scholarship opportunities. All right, maybe this is also, I thought someone else also, yes, East Coast. No problem, Jay, East Coast, yes. Someone also is saying that they're studying the MLIS program in the fall. So maybe this is me asking a question maybe to Gabrielle in part, but others, like, did you feel like your MLS degree was helpful? What have you learned? What would you like to impart for others in that process, or MFA, PhD, etc.? That
Yeah,
might be
I can definitely speak to the MLIS since I
Yeah.
literally just did that program 2022 to 2024 at the University of Washington. I think it's one of those things where the degree is useful if you kind of want to advance long term in the field. That's kind of like its base function for the field. You can still do work related to libraries and archives without the degree. It just prevents you for, like, for instance, from moving up like hierarchically at an institution. That's kind of effectively what it does. But typically it's a 2-year program, which is nice because you don't have to commit like 6 years or something to it. I found it really helpful just to build on like intellectually, but also work at the same time that I was doing that degree. In terms of scholarships, I have so many recommendations. So pretty much every related professional organization, American Library Association, Society of American Archivists, every regional library and archive association. So like California, like archivists is a group. There's some that are kind of grouped by several states. The Association of Moving Image Archivists, the like Art Libraries Association, Visual Resources Association, a couple other ones like Records Management and Archives like Association. These all have scholarships. A lot of them are geared towards students. Some are just geared more towards like conferences or like memberships, which are still useful. I was able to get a really great scholarship through the American Library Association called the Spectrum Scholarship. I think that's like truly one of the best ones in the field. I think for my cohort, there was like 70 of us. It's like a base like $5,000, but my school matched, so I was able to get a bit more money out of it. Certain programs will match more or give more based on that. I heard from someone that the Urbana-Champaign program in Illinois will give you like a full ride if you get that scholarship, which I thought was like kind of wild. But there's definitely opportunities out there. There's also going to be adjacent scholarships that aren't library science specific that you can still apply for as like a graduate student, whether that's like identity based or like things like that from different either foundations or other sources. Those will be obviously more competitive because it's not based to one kind of discipline or degree. But there's definitely a variety out there. The professional orgs are great. They're also just good to like connect with in terms of conferences, meeting people and being able to like chat with folks about their experiences. Like that's really valuable. I will say that like the majority of people in this profession are extremely generous with their time and they would be happy to chat with you and also connect you with other opportunities. I think that's like something that I've really come to appreciate. Like it's not a perfect field, obviously, like as we all kind of know, I would say, but a lot of people have their hearts in the right place and are definitely willing to help you out.
Awesome. Gabrielle, you're getting put on the spot again. Paige asked, any recommendations on how to find organizations that benefit or help marginalized communities that are hiring MLIS grads?
I would probably say, like, again, within those professional organizations, there are what are called like committees or working groups that are definitely geared more specifically towards marginalized communities, people of color, LGBT communities as well. So those I think would be more specifically where those would be most useful. I'm forgetting one of the organizations that's just like related to folks in library science who are people of color as well. I'm forgetting the name off the top of my head. I'll have to look on my Instagram really quick. But there are definitely different smaller organizations outside of the kind of bigger groups as well. I think a lot of the times like community archives are also really great places to look just to like kind of learn from folks' experiences there. For instance, like South Asian American Digital Archive. They're a really great organization as well. Obviously, one, Lesbian Herstory Archives, GLBT's Historical Society in the Bay Area lesbians. I think there's also a couple other in like the South and the Midwest, like Gerbert Hart in the Midwest, Invisible Histories in the kind of Southern region as well. All those folks would definitely be great people to reach out to as well, just to also like hear about their experiences with like navigating, finding positions. I will say for me, like the Spectrum scholarship community through American Library Association was crucial, I think, and like really geared towards like helping and figuring out most effective ways for like hiring marginalized library and archival workers. So yeah, I will find that other one though and put it in the chat.
Amazing. Yeah, and I would just say too, like you've heard all of us talk about, I mean, one archives probably has the most institutional support from, but still a lot of hustle to no institutional support, lots of hustle. But sometimes making contact with these organizations and maybe applying to a grant together so that there's a job as part of a processing grant, or and my side on the exhibition side as a kind of research assistant, or other ways to go about it, a little more challenging, but we all have to get a little wily and crafty in these times. And sometimes you kind of have to make the position you want to be in, if there's not a kind of full-time job on the market that's hiring exactly what you want to do. Unfortunately, or fortunately. All right, well, I don't want to belabor any of these points. I will read one thanks from the chat. Thank you for sharing. Just said, thanks for sharing and highlighting so many aspects of the work here, from the frustrating but vital logistics to the broader spiritual and still living nature of the materials related to these communities. Thank you for recognizing, yes, the wide variety and different aspects that all of us are shepherding and juggling with queer archives and community space making. If there's any closing thoughts, I invite both my panelists to share. Otherwise, I just want to thank them for such a robust discussion. And thanks for those who joined us live, and hopefully other folks in the chat. There's digging the point. Sorry, I'll just read more for the chat. Digging the point made about generative experiences for artists being inspired through other art. I'm here like, hey, I do that. As a musician and writer, now I know that there's a word for it. Amazing. All right, any closing thoughts, guys?
Yeah, I would just say in terms of like closing remarks, for me, like being involved in LGBT archiving has been really fulfilling soulfully for me. I think when I first started working at Lambda pre-graduate school, I really had that emotional experience, like connecting with the material, like especially when I was going through HIV and AIDS memorial objects from the collection. I think that was just like one of those like moments when you understand that we have all these different like collective histories that our communities have experienced over time, even if it was before our births, like in my case, but and really seeing the continued threads of relevance in terms of, again, connecting strategies and practices from the past, like those are really huge. There's a concept that one of my professors, who's a really awesome scholar in community archives specifically, is, I think it was like something about kind of like critical nostalgia or like archival nostalgia, but like activating it now in the present. Like the past is not over. It's like always happening and it's always relevant. And history is not the same, but it rhymes. You know, things kind of come up again or they manifest differently now. And I think that we can always benefit from learning from our elders and our kind of community members from yonder years past now. And that's always going to be relevant now. Even if you're not like a trained archivist in this profession, like I think being involved in this work at a grassroots level is still equally as important, whether that's doing oral history work or just connecting with other people in your community and hearing and understanding and learning their stories is like so important, especially with like just the world that we're living in right now is like, you know, it's not the first time our community has faced so much like dire circumstances. And I think it's important to, like look back to see like, how did we deal with that then? And what can we learn from that now? Shout out to the LGBTQ Religious Archives Network. They're great. I interned with them many years ago, but they're a really cool organization. I think connecting the religious and spiritual in a way that like not many people like to do. I think there's a lot of hesitancy about that in LGBT communities and spaces, but that's another really great board. Sorry, that was a derailment, but yeah, we appreciate your interest in this, and we hope that you'll join us in kind of doing this work.
Yeah, I think with everything that's happening right now in the world and just the heaviness that is happening, and yes, it definitely is not something that I feel like we're not, I guess, something that we haven't been through before, but I feel like this time is very different. And I say that because I think the resources that we have available to us are resources that we did not have available then. And I know that we teed the line, especially when we talk about like technology and AI, and like when we go into all these like spaces and scenarios of like, well, what is the future going to look like? Are robots going to be attacking us? And like we go into like these, things, but I ask for those of y'all that are out there that have not only skills, but gifts to be able to use those gifts and skills and abilities in this time, because we do have more materials and tools available to us and resources available to us that we can not only create, invent, but use, and I think that this is the time to do that. Like if you have, and it doesn't even have to be in tech, like it doesn't even have to be in digital or digital spaces, but I say this because that's the ways in which a lot of us are connecting now. And not to say that we're not going to go back to shared spaces. I really do, especially with Pluto and Aquarius, Uranus and Gemini. I do believe people are going to be wanting to go back to shared spaces again. I think we're going to see an uptick and an uprising of intellectualism and critical thought and critical thinking and radical thinking and revolutionary thinking and thought. And I think that we are going to go back to those shared spaces as we're moving through the digital spaces. So big or small, whatever your contribution is to the community that you want to give, start thinking of not just the community in general, but start thinking yourself as an individual and like, what do I want to contribute to my communities? As I'm looking at building communities in the future, what are some of the things that I can bring to I don't want to say what can I bring to the table, but like what can I bring to my community that can either see, maybe if you're not an artist, you love to cook, maybe if maybe you know how to garden, maybe you're an architect and you know how to build homes, maybe you are a librarian, maybe you love children and you love to take care of kids, maybe you like to take care of the animals. Like I'm thinking future forward because we're in a time right now where the empire is collapsing. Yes, we're in a dumpster fire right now. And we are at the precipice point where we're going to need to start to rebuild. Okay. And so this is the prime time right now as we're going through this veil, how the veil is being very thin right now and things are being revealed, where we're going to have to start to think about not only the present day of what's happening now, but what we're going to be rebuilding in the future, because we're going to have to rebuild. It's crumbling, y'all. And I know you don't want to hear it. Some of y'all might not want to hear it because it's scary and it's a lot going on, but we weren't put here for nothing. Okay. A lot of us have reincarnated here some, and others are new stars here that are coming here to be the people that are rebuilding and building. Elizabeth from not the Bay Area Lesbian Archives, from the Ashe Project told me a long, long time ago when we did the Ashe project online after the 2019 stuff was happening. And she said, there's two types of people in this world, crew. You can either be a builder or a destroyer. So you have to figure out which side of that you want to be on and start from that and and build from that. So even if you don't have a community with you right now, even if you're like, well, I don't got no friends, I'm alone, whatever the case may be, start to think of yourself as an individual, but then also like, what would be my community needs inside of a community, and get with people that align with what that looks like to you and start to to integrate that into your larger communities and things like that. And also thinking about the libraries and what you preserve. How do you want to preserve those things? In what ways can we preserve our memories, our stories, our communities, and what that looks like? Maybe y'all want to make a yearbook, you know what I'm saying? Maybe y'all want to make, zines. And also one thing I'll leave y'all with also as well too, not only just for the living, but also people who have passed over, okay? The death, when people pass over and are no longer with us as well, because I think that's not something that we always talk about, is when people are passing over or are dead or dying or death, like what we can also do with their materials after they pass away as well too. So start thinking about what that could also look like, to have like community archival spaces on deck that everybody is also contributing to in the community as well. So that's something I think that I would leave everybody with for sure.
Wow. Well said. I really have not very much to add. I think we can leave with those words and just say, let's use this as a rallying cry for both queer archives, community, and figuring out what we want to build towards in the future. I really want to thank my panelists for sharing the stage with me, and thanks for the work that you're doing and continuing to do. Thanks for everyone listening in and tuning in from home or watching the recording. And I'm sure all of us are happy to be contacted, and we want to work together on future projects. And thanks to SJSU School of Information for the invitation to have this conversation. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you all so much.
Thank y'all. Y'all can hit me up anytime. I'm back on email now, y'all. So hit me up if you got questions and things.